So I'm doing a headlight restoration here, and you can see that I've got a lot of just patchiness in the light and yellowing and things like that. And I kind of had a nightmare on the first one and almost ruined it. But as you can see here, the first light came out looking pretty awesome after a near disaster of using 100 grit sandpaper on it. So lessons learned, I'm going to quickly go through what we're doing over here on this light, and I'm going to walk through steps. But I found this awesome product at Lowe's. Let me get this here. This great product here, it's a 3M Sandblaster Pro, this ultra flexible sanding sheet. This stuff really does last 15 times longer, and it's like super flexible. It's got like a rubber backing on it. As you'll see in just a second, it really takes that first layer of plastic off that headlight and gets that yellowy stuff off. So I'm going to go step by step through here, showing it each stage. I'm going to put the camera on pause as I go through it and show you what I get. So I'm going to just take a normal kind of rubbery sanding block, something soft, but I'm going to wrap this paper right around it. And you can see how flexible it is. It just literally wraps right around it. And I'm going to start with 220, and then I'm going to go up to 320. And I'm going to do this pretty quickly, as you'll see here. So the goal here is to kind of turn this lens completely white, and the more that you take off, the more of that yellow jump, and you can see that that's kind of yellowish in color. That's all that oxidation that is literally coming off. This sandpaper is awesome. It just takes that stuff right off. And then what we're going to do is use a finer and finer sandpaper all the way up until we get to 3000 grit. And then finally, we're going to go over it with a rubbing compound. And it'll turn out like the first one that I showed you. Let me go on pause for a minute. I'm going to sand the rest of this, but it's just going to keep getting yellow and yellow until eventually it just starts turning white. That's when we know we've eaten all the yellow junk off. So I just want to show you guys, I've gone over this once with the 220 ultra flexible 3M sandpaper. And what's cool about this sandpaper does not clog. It just keeps going and going and going. You blow it off once in a while and that's about it. But in the beginning, you saw how this powder here was all yellow, and now it's starting to come off white. That's what we're looking for. We want it to start coming off white. And what you'll see here is I just kind of wipe this off with my hand. Normally I'd use a rag, but you can see there's some pretty deep scratches in there. Those will all come out in the next layers. But I went over this 4 or 5 times before it started coming off white, which tells me all that yellowy oxidation is now off. All right, just so you can see what I'm doing, I've got 320 here, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna go over it 4 or 5 times with 320, and should get a very similar effect. You won't see a whole lot of difference, but it's gonna make these deeper scratches a lot finer. So I've gone over this light 2 or 3 times with this 320 ultra flexible 3M sandpaper, and you'll see a kind of the same effect, right? The only thing, it's kind of hard to tell in the video, but the scratches are getting finer. They're still kind of deep. Don't stress out too much. If I do see any real deep imperfections, I try to get them out as much as possible. But and you'll notice here too, something I didn't mention before, I put a lot of tape around these edges, like 3 or 4 layers. The first headlight I did, I put 2 layers of tape, and at one tiny spot it rubbed through and actually nicked my paint, which really is not cool. So this time I put 4 or 5 layers of tape around this, kind of went out further from the edge. So you don't want to hit your paint with sandpaper with whatever you do. I'm going to go over this 3 or 4 more times with this 320. Alright, so the next step is I use a 3M sandpaper from Lowe's. It's a 400 grit Sandblaster Pro. I'm debating if this step is even necessary because I'm going from 320 to 400. It's really not that big of a difference. But my personal preference is, as I'm getting these deep scratches out, to go up gradually before I make a big jump, because after the 400 we're going to go to 800 grit and I'm going to use a drill. So I'll show you that in just a minute, but pretty much same thing. We're just going to go over this 4 or 5 times and wipe it off, and then we'll go to the next step. So the only thing that sucks about this step is this sandpaper gets clogged a lot. You can see it's kind of clogging up on the paper, and it'll cause like clog marks kind of on here. And they didn't sell the ultra flexible sandpaper above the 320 grit at Lowe's. I'm gonna look online and see if you can order it, but so I had to stick with this kind of more traditional sandpaper, but you got to constantly clear it out, and I do that just by wiping it off with a paper towel or blowing on it, and I keep wiping the lens off to get some of the dust off of it. But I've gone over this like twice now. I'm gonna do it like 2 more times and it should be good. So originally how I started this project was I bought this 3M headlight restoration solutions kit. It's $25 at like a AutoZone or Advanced Auto, something like that. And what it does is it comes with this buffing wheel that you put into your drill, and it comes with these various sanding discs. And they start out with this gold disc, and this is what I used in the beginning. I think it's like a 500 grit paper, and it's kind of Velcro, and it just sticks right onto the drill. And it's supposed to make this thing nice and easy, but what I found is that this 500 grit sandpaper is complete garbage. It left all kinds of marks and blemishes in the first headlight, and maybe my technique was off, but regardless, that's when I kind of figured out I needed to do something different to save my headlight. And that's when I went to Lowe's and bought the ultra flexible sandpaper. So I got the 220 to 320 to 400, and I do that myself. And now I'm going to switch over to this headlight kit, but I'm going to take this here, throw that thing right in the garbage. Right, we don't need it. Instead, I'm going to start now with this 800 grit disc, and I'll use 2 discs on this light, and I'm going to go over it with the drill. So I'm just going to put this on here very carefully. Alright, and we're basically going to just buff that headlight out with this 800 grit sandpaper. Go. So what I'm doing here is I'm going over this headlight, and you're going to see kind of that white residue come off of this. I've got a drill from Harbor Freight, really cheap drill, but it works good. So we're going to go over this light, and I'm just going to show you what it kind of looks like. I'm going to make sure I go over this headlight 4 or 5 times at this sandpaper, and I'll probably do that with both of the discs that I have in the kit. So that's about 8 times total. Make sure I hit the edges, not to hit your paint, but hit her all around the edges, and make sure that this comes off clean. You'll probably have to clean this out every so often, get it unclogged, and also wipe the light off. Usually I use a paper towel. Wipe the light off as you go. Alright, so this is probably the coolest step. I just got done with the 800 grit sandpaper, and now what they've given is a 3000 grit disc here. For this step, it's better to have a partner, because I've got a water bottle here filled with water. I'm going to have my son spraying the light down while I use the drill going over this entire light. This is a cool step, because at this point, you can see how white the light is, and I want to wipe all the excess powder off here as well, and you'll see it's pretty much white frosted. Kind of makes you think that it's permanently ruined, but trust me, it's not. I'm going to use a tack cloth just to get a little bit of extra powder off as we go. But literally what we're going to do is spray that disc. I'm going to stick that to the back of that drill. We're going to spray it down. You want to keep this light wet the entire time. So as I'm sanding, which we can't show you because there's only 2 of us, but as I'm going over the light, my son's going to be keeping it wet by spraying water on it. Alright, I'm going to do this literally about 10 times. I'm going to go over and over and over and over again. It's probably the most important step of this entire process. So we'll show you what it looks like as soon as we get done. Just to show you what it's kind of going to look like. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to spray my drill and get everything nice and wet. And you should see some white slurry coming off the sandpaper and on the lens. That's a good thing. That means it's taking those rough scratches out and making them really, really fine. So as you can already see here, you're starting to be able to see through that lens, whereas before you can't. And we're just going to keep going over this, and it's going to get clearer and clearer. All right, so I'm going to finish it up. All right, as you can see, the light is pretty clear at this point. So it's a huge improvement from where we were at. And you also see all of that oxidation that was on there before, all that is gone now. So this light is looking a million times better. But this is one of the final steps. There are 2 steps remaining, both of them around buffing and waxing. So the kit that I bought came with this buffing wheel to put on my drill, and it came with some rubbing compound. If you have your own buffing wheel or compound and stuff, I'm sure it would work. But this stuff, it really works fantastic. So what I'm going to do is stick this on the drill, and I'm going to put a dime size worth of compound onto the sponge and put this on here, but I'm going to kind of smear it around so I get more on the light versus on me once this thing starts up. So now I'm going to buff this literally about 15 times. Just go back and forth. And one thing I try to do is to do the top half and then do the bottom half. The other thing, you don't want this sponge to run dry. Now it's pretty wet with compound, but this is a single-use type thing. It's enough in here for both headlights. So I'm gonna use it up as much as possible. I'm gonna smear this on here. Get it all on there. I'm gonna do the bottom half of this light, and again I'm gonna do this pretty much as long as I can. This is the probably second most important step. Pause it. So as you can see, I'm done with the buffing step, and that looks really good. I mean, you can see my reflection through the light. All that oxidation is gone. All the heavy scratches are out of that light. That buffing compound works extremely well. I probably went over this light with the buffing compound about 10 times. And I just kept lathering it on that sponge and going over and over again. And you'll see some of this tape starts to fray. So this is one of the reasons why I like putting in lots of layers. But there's one final step that I recommend. I'm putting on a cleaner wax, Meguiar's. So we're just gonna wax that light real quick. Takes about 2 minutes, take the tape off and see what it looks like. Some people will actually clear coat their headlight at this point, just keep the oxidation from coming back. I'm not going to do that. I've had mixed effects with that. In the past I've had stuff yellow up even more. So we're not even going to do that. We're just going to put a coat of wax on it and keep it waxed going forward in the future. And I think that's about it. I'll show you what the final product looks like here in just a second. There's a finished product. If you go back to the beginning of this video, and I may edit in a clip here, but you'll see how yellow that light was. Look how awesome it looks now. Back up here, I have two very clear headlights. Now I've got plastic dust all over the hood of this car, so I've got to go out and paint it. Just be careful you don't scratch your car off if you're washing that. Just kind of hose it off really good before you wipe it down. This is a pretty straightforward do-it-yourselfer type project. My elbow's a little bit sore, but other than that, it's not that bad. Give it a whirl.